everyone, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I wanted to share with you guys my first impressions of the M Cosmetics Portrait Mode Translucent Powder. So this is their latest release. It's a setting powder, and I'm very excited for this because personally I'm a huge fan of pressed powders, and I've been on the hunt for a new one. And M Cosmetics is one of my favorite makeup brands, so I'm really hoping that this works well for my skin. So in today's video, I will be demoing this, giving you guys my initial wear test impressions. So hopefully this video is helpful for any of you who are curious about this release. So to start things off, let's talk about packaging. So this is the box that it comes in. Very nice and luxe. On the back, it says that Portrait Mode is a sheer pressed powder with the blurring and mattifying strength of a loose powder. The plant-powered formula blends conditioning emollients like squalene and vitamin E with pore-blurring silica powder and oil-absorbing cornstarch for perfectly balanced texture and finish for instant and lasting perfection. So they did release this just in one shade, which is called Sheer. I do wonder if over time they might release additional shades, because I do think that these sorts of translucent powders, even though they're supposed to be clear, can often leave a cast on those with deeper skin tones. So if you've tried this and you do have a deeper skin tone, please let me know. So here is what the packaging looks like. As you guys can tell, I wore this sweater dress today in part to match the packaging. This is very unique for M Cosmetics. They typically have more minimalist style packaging. So for example, here are some of the other M Cosmetics products that I have on my face today, and you can see that these look much more plain and simple in their packaging. My understanding is that this one is kind of Alice in Wonderland inspired in terms of the aesthetic. They actually do have a purse that you can buy as well, which is called the Alice Crossbody. So that's why I'm assuming the inspo is. Now, this compact is relatively light. If you guys have experienced M Cosmetics in the past, you know that in general their packaging is quite simple and chic, but it isn't the most luxurious feeling in that it does kind of have that light plastic feel to it. That said, I am a fan of a lot of their products from a formulation standpoint. So for this compact, there's a little button here that you press to open things up. Oops. And then we have, interesting. So this is the powder puff that comes with it. It's very, very thin, actually. Yeah, I don't know how well this will work. I will demo this for you guys, but it's interesting. It's like sort of a velvety texture. It's not like one of those like really puffy puffs. And here we have the powder itself. So it actually has a bit of a peachy, pinky tone to it. So that's interesting as well. So for context, I am someone who likes to powder my complexion just to really set everything and ensure that my products aren't slipping and sliding as the day goes on. But personally, I find loose powders just really finicky to use. And so I would say my favorite formulations for powder tend to be loose powders, especially the Kogan Dough powder is my ride or die. I also really love the Huda Beauty and By Terry powders, but I do just find those super finicky to use. So on days when I'm not filming, I do strongly prefer to have a pressed powder. And other than the Charlotte Tilbury and the Pat McGrath pressed powders, I haven't found that many that work super well for me. And so I'm really, really hoping this one does. Now, one thing that did catch my attention from the description is the mention of cornstarch. I'm a little bit concerned about that because if you guys have been watching my channel, you know that recently I tried the Westman Atelier powder, which worked horribly on me, and cornstarch is one of the main ingredients for that clean beauty formula. So let's hope that this one fares better. So let me just start by giving you guys a quick swatch. This is a translucent powder, so you're not gonna be able to probably see that much of it, but here's the swatch in case that's helpful. So on the plus side, I feel like it actually doesn't leave much of a cast, at least on my skin tone. It really just looks quite invisible. I can't really see where I applied it at this point. Now for the face application, I'm going to use a brush on one half and then this little provided cushion on the other half. So as you guys can see, I have a very dewy complexion on right now. I thought that would be helpful just to illustrate how well this powder works. If you guys are curious what I have on today, it's basically a full face of M Cosmetics plus Lisa Eldridge, because I will be filming another video today as well. That video will be my initial impressions of the Sorcery palette, so I'm not sure which one is coming up first, but just wanted to let you guys know in case you're interested in that palette as well. But all the products will be linked in my description box as usual. So let's just start on this side of my face, and I'm going to first go in with my Rephr Holiday brush and just take a bit of this powder and dab this along the under eye area. Okay, that looks pretty nice. Hopefully you guys can just see how that mattified slightly there. Taking a bit more, I'm going to use this brush just around the center of my face so I can really get into any crevices. Basically setting where I put my concealer on. Ooh. Okay, that looks pretty nice actually. I don't know if you guys can see, but just with a little bit of powder, this area of my face is looking a bit more matte, but not dry. Okay, that's good so far. Switching over to a larger brush, this is my Rephr 30 brush. I'm going to kind of sweep in a little bit more generously and coat the rest of my face. I do, in addition to complexion, already have bronzer and blush on, cream bronzer and cream blush, because I really wanted to just, you know, put all of the cream and liquid products on my face at once to see how well this powder can set things. Hopefully you guys can see the difference between the two sides of my face. So here is the set side and here is the unset side. So taking a really close look, I would say right around my nose, it's not necessarily looking the most flattering ever. I don't know if you guys can see that. I mean, that's common for me in this nose crease area. Powders don't always sit the best. But other than right there, I think everywhere else is looking really nice. And I do appreciate that this side of my face doesn't look flat matte at all. It still has some of that luminosity peeking through. So that's my personal preference. I don't really want to look completely matte. So on the other side, I'm going to use this little included sponge. Let's see how well this works. So I'm just going to scoop a little bit on and then tap this under my eye area. See? Okay, that definitely applied more powder, I think, than the brush. Let's go ahead and stamp this around my T-zone. Okay, I think it's actually doing a decent job. I don't know, I haven't really used a powder puff like this before. I guess the velvety texture just means it can sort of pick up a bit more product in more of an even layer. I am a little worried though that this is also picking up some of my blush and bronzer, so I think my preferred application is still the brush application, but that did work, and you can see that made very quick work of this side. The only thing I don't like is I feel like here where I have my cheek products, I do feel like this puff just picked up a little bit of that product there, so now it's looking a tad bit patchy. Whereas I feel like on this side I didn't have that issue. But overall, it's looking nice. And I like how neither side of my face is looking really dry. In terms of this nostril area, I think actually the application with the puff was a little bit smoother because I was able to just really press the powder in, whereas on the side with the brush, it's a little bit more patchy looking. I think I need to kind of just press that product back in over here. But that's good to know. Overall, at least upon initial application, I think this is looking good. Now, if you're someone who really wants a matte effect, I don't think this is gonna give it to you. But if you're someone like me who has kind of normal to dry skin, this is looking pretty promising upon initial application. Now, to further test out this product, I also brought out my M Cosmetics bronzer and blush because I want to see how well these powder products glide on top now that I've set my base. So I'm going to first go into the bronzer and slip, and I'm going to just take that same Rephr number 30 brush and start sweeping this around my face. Just want to make sure that once everything's powdered, the glide is really smooth. And this is looking good. I'm not seeing the bronzer cling to any patches, so that's nice. Basically, I want to make sure my face is actually set, and it seems to be, so that's nice. Actually, also going to take the tip of the other brush and just use a bit of this on my nose as well, just to further contour it. I think that's applying smoothly. And then I have the Heaven's Glow blush in the shade Baroque. This is pretty light on me, so I'm just going to take a bit of this on that smaller brush and just put this all over my cheeks. As you can see, this shade is almost more like a highlighter on me than a blush. It's quite subtle, but since I do have that green eyeshadow later, I think it'll be good to start with a bit more of a neutral blush. It's very pretty. Actually run that along my nose as well. Alrighty, so that's pretty nice. I'm actually very pleased about this initial application of this product. I feel like it's done very well in these initial tests. As you can see, everything just looks very smooth on my face. My face doesn't look that dry, but it also definitely looks set. Not getting that same juicy glow that I had before. So far so good. I'm going to go off camera, finish off the rest of this makeup look, and then be back with some wear test updates. So here we are for the first check-in. So I have finished the rest of my makeup. It's been maybe around an hour since I initially powdered, maybe a little bit less than that. So I wanted to take a really close-up look to see how things are looking. So I would say around most of my face, it's looking really beautiful. So basically, you know, the majority of areas. Now, if I'm looking at my problem areas specifically, which are wherever I have creasing near the center of my face, I would say on the plus side, it's not looking dry, which is good. Oftentimes I have this issue where powders start looking really cakey and dry and flaky, but that's not an issue with this one so far. That said, it's not looking beautiful, to say the least. I think there's definitely some areas where the product has sort of clumped a little bit, so just like around my eyes and specifically, you know, my nose area, and then just a little bit around my mouth. That is pretty typical for me though. I will say I tend to have issues in these areas, so it's not like this powder is doing worse than other powders, but it's also not looking like super amazing, I would say, compared to other powders. That said, the last powder I tried out, which was the Westman Atelier, did look really bad at this point already, so at least compared to that powder, this one is looking way better. My only caveat would be if you are someone who's pretty oily, I feel like you might need to go in with a heavier hand with this powder, because definitely since I have had a little bit of sweat come out and the powder's mingled more with the luminosity of the base, I think at this point it's looking not super matte. So my guess, and we'll see actually in the wear test, is that by the end of the day I might start looking a little bit more greasy than I would like. But at least at the moment the level of luminosity is pretty good. So far so good. Not necessarily the best powder in the world, but performing really well, especially compared to a lot of the other pressed powders that I've tried. So here we are at the end of the wear test. It's been around 8 hours since I first put on this powder. And in that time, it's been a relatively chill day for me. I've gone on a couple walks, did some chores, so it's not like I did anything super intensive. For context, it is pretty rainy and humid where I am today, so that might have also affected today's wear test. So let me bring you guys closer. Overall, I think actually this is looking really nice. So you can see my face does look pretty luminous. I think that's mostly from the complexion products I used. It's not looking a ton more luminous than when I first started, at least across most of my face. In the areas where I do tend to have more oil, so around my nose, I am seeing that it is looking a little bit oily, like, you know, definitely around here you can see a bit of oil pooling. So I will say that in the future I would probably use a bit more powder in this T-zone area. If you are someone who has very oily skin, I would recommend going in with a heavier hand or touching up with this powder over the course of the day. It's definitely not a super matte powder overall. In terms of the area under my eyes, you can see that the product has swum a little bit there, a little bit of concealer, and also some eyeshadow has pooled in these creases a bit. But other than that, it's actually looking pretty good. So at least based on this initial wear test, I'm feeling pretty positively about this product. I'll have to keep trying it out to give you guys my full verdict, but I am actually quite impressed with how it fared today. For context, usually when I try powders, my bigger issue is with dryness, and so that has not at all been the issue today. If anything, the only issue is that it didn't do enough to set my T-zone. But like I said, I think I can address that by just applying more powder in the future. So on the whole, I'm pretty happy with this purchase. I enjoy this formula, at least based on the initial use today. And given how much I like M Cosmetics in general, I wouldn't be surprised if this becomes a staple in my collection. I wouldn't say that I'm totally blown away at this point, but this is extremely promising, especially compared to other pressed powders that I've tried lately. I really like how this is truly invisible on the skin. If you guys watched my Kogan Dough video, you know that that pressed powder does leave a bit of sort of a gray cast, and so I think it's nice that this is truly translucent, at least on my skin tone. And then unlike the Westman Atelier, it did not completely destroy my complexion products underneath. I think it's interacted with them actually quite nicely, and it's worn throughout the day very nicely as well. Definitely not drying at all. And I think it's done a really good job too of just keeping the luminance on my skin, so my skin still looks really healthy and dewy even though it's powdered. I would love to hear in the comments if you guys have tried out this powder, especially if you have a different skin type than me or different skin tone. Please let me know how this has fared for you. And also, if you have a favorite pressed powder, please let me know, because I'm not sure that my search will stop here. We'll see. I mean, this might become a new favorite, but I am always on the search for good pressed powders, so would love to hear any recommendations. So that's it for today's video. If you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you all so much for joining me today, and I'll catch you next time. Bye!